The emergency sirens across Loomis 7 shattered 3 centuries of peace in a single moment. Ambassador Tillis felt his delicate wings tremble as the first explosions lit up the dawn sky. The Cheery people had never known war. Their 7 colony worlds existed in harmony, creating art and philosophy while their allies in the Venn Collective provided security. That arrangement had worked perfectly until today. "Ambassador, they're everywhere," his aide chittered, her antennae drooping in terror. The Drakkar Empire. Hundreds of ships. Through the tall windows of the diplomatic center, Tillis watched black vessels descend through the clouds like falling stones. The Drakkar were known throughout the galaxy as conquerors. They took worlds and enslaved populations. The Cheery, fragile and peaceful, would not survive a single day under their rule. "Send the distress call to the Venn," Tillis said, forcing calm into his voice. "Tell them we need immediate military assistance." His aide worked the communications panel with shaking limbs. The Venn Collective had protected the Cheery for generations. They would come. They had to come. Across the city, the first Drakkar soldiers landed. Commander Brix led the assault personally, his scaled face showing no emotion as his troops moved through the streets. The Cheery civilians scattered before them like leaves in wind. Some tried to flee, others simply froze in fear. "Minimal resistance," one of his officers reported. Their defense fleet retreated after the first exchange. Brix nodded. This would be simple. The Cheery had technology and resources, but they had no stomach for fighting. Within a week, they would accept servitude. Within a month, they would forget they were ever free. In the underground shelters, Dr. Wennick tried to maintain order among thousands of terrified civilians. The Cheery had built these facilities for natural disasters, not invasions. There were not enough supplies, not enough space. Children clung to their parents while elders whispered prayers to gods who seemed very far away. "How long until the Venn arrive?" someone asked. Wennick had no answer. The distress call had been sent, but the Venn were 3 systems away. Even at maximum speed, they would need 5 days to reach Loomis 7. The Cheery might not have 5 days. Above the planet, Ambassador Tillis remained in the diplomatic center, refusing to hide while his people suffered. He watched the status reports flow across his screens. The Drakkar controlled the capital. They had seized the spaceports. Resistance was impossible. Then the communications panel lit up with an incoming transmission. "Distress call received," a voice said in perfect Cheery language. "This is the Sol System Expeditionary Force. We are inbound to your position. Prepare for combat operations." Tillis stared at the screen. Sol System? He had never heard of it. "Who are you?" He transmitted back. "We called for the Venn Collective. Your signal was rerouted through Relay Station 47, the voice replied. "We received it first. Arrival in 72 hours. The transmission ended before Tillis could respond. His aide pulled up the galactic database, searching for any information about the Sol system. What she found made her antennae flatten against her head in terror. "Ambassador, they're human." The word sent ice through Tillis's body. Humans, the species from the restricted world. Earth was classified as a Class 12 Deathworld, a planet so violent and dangerous that it had produced the most terrifying predators in known space. Humans were quarantined by galactic law. They were not supposed to have faster-than-light travel. They were not supposed to be out here. "Cancel the response," Tillis said quickly. "Tell them we made a mistake," but his aide shook her head. "They're not responding to hails. Ambassador, they're already on their way." In the shelters, Dr. Wennick heard the news spread like wildfire among the refugees. Humans were coming. The stories about them were horrifying. They came from a world of constant danger, where everything tried to kill everything else. They had evolved as pack hunters, as persistent predators who chased prey until it died of exhaustion. Their bodies could survive injuries that would kill any civilized species, and now they were coming here. "We should surrender to the Drakkar," someone suggested. "At least we know what they want," others agreed. The Drakkar were cruel, but they were understandable. Humans were unknown. Humans were feared. Commander Brix also received intelligence about the incoming human fleet. His officers brought him reports from the galactic database, warnings about Earth and its inhabitants. He read them with growing interest rather than fear. 3 ships, he said. Only 3. And they're from a species that has never fought a space battle. This changes nothing. His officers seemed less certain. The reports described human capabilities in disturbing detail. Humans could function in high gravity, low oxygen, extreme temperatures. They healed from wounds that would be fatal to Drakkar warriors. They had something called adrenaline that let them ignore pain and injury. They're primitives with stolen technology, Brix declared. When they arrive, we'll add them to our collection of conquered species. He ordered his forces to continue the occupation. Loomis 7 would be fully under Drakkar control before these humans arrived. Then he would show the galaxy what happened to Deathworlders who left their cage. Ambassador Tillis spent the next 3 days in agony. The Drakkar tightened their grip on the planet. More shelters fell. More Chiri were captured. The Ven still had not responded to the distress call. Perhaps they had decided the Chiri were not worth saving. Only the humans were coming. On the third day, alarms screamed across every Drakkar ship. Sensors detected massive energy signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 3 vessels appeared, each one larger than a Drakkar battleship. Their hulls were covered in scarred armor plating, marked with dozens of repaired impacts. They looked like they had been built for war and nothing else. The human fleet broadcast on all frequencies. Their message translated into every known language. This is Commander Ann Rodriguez of the Sol Expeditionary Force. We received a distress call from Loomis 7. All hostile forces are ordered to withdraw immediately. This is your only warning. Commander Brix watched the human ships approach and smiled. They wanted a fight. They would get one. He had 40 vessels to their 3. He had warriors who had conquered a dozen worlds. These humans would learn their place. In the shelters below, the Chiri people waited in darkness, caught between 2 forces they did not understand. Dr. Wennick held a crying child and wondered what kind of species answered a distress call from strangers 3 systems away. Ambassador Tillis stood at his window, watching the stars. Somewhere up there the Deathworlders were coming. He had called for allies and received something else entirely. The galaxy was about to learn what humans did when someone called for help. The human warships moved through space with a grace that seemed wrong for something so large. Commander Ann Rodriguez studied the tactical display from the bridge of her flagship. 40 Drakkar vessels formed a blockade around Loomis 7. Standard Imperial formation. Predictable. She had read about the Drakkar during the 3-day journey. They were warriors who relied on overwhelming force and intimidation. Scanning their formations now, her tactical officer reported. They're positioning to protect their ground forces. Anne nodded. The Drakkar thought this was their planet now. They were wrong. Launch fighters. All wings. Tell Captain Grant to prep his Marines for boarding operations. Below decks, Captain Lewis Grant checked his combat armor one more time. His Marines were already suited up, weapons loaded, faces set in determined expressions. They had volunteered for this mission knowing nothing about the Chiri except that they needed help. That was enough. Listen up. Grant addressed his troops. We're going in hot. The Drakkar have civilians under their control. Rules of engagement. Protect the innocent. Eliminate the threat. Anyone who can't handle that stays on the ship. No one moved. They were all going. In the fighter bay, pilot officer Yuki Tanaka ran through her pre-flight checks. Her squadron was already strapped in, engines warming. The fighter craft looked fragile compared to the massive capital ships, but they were fast and deadly. Tower, this is Raptor Squadron, she transmitted. Ready for launch. Raptor Squadron, you are cleared. Show them what Earth sends. The fighter bay doors opened to reveal the black of space. Yuki felt the familiar rush as her craft shot forward into the void. Behind her, 30 more fighters formed up in perfect formation. The Drakkar fleet was getting larger in her canopy. On Loomis 7, Ambassador Tillis watched the battle begin. The human fighters moved like nothing he had ever seen. They twisted and rolled through space at speeds that should have turned their pilots into liquid. Drakkar point defense systems tried to track them and failed. How are they doing that? His aide whispered. Tillis accessed the database again, reading deeper into human physiology. Their bodies could withstand gravitational forces that would kill a Chiri instantly. What seemed like suicide maneuvers to other species was normal flying for humans. The first Drakkar ship exploded in brilliant silence. Commander Brix felt his confidence waver as reports flooded in. The human fighters were everywhere at once, striking from impossible angles. His gunners could not land hits. The few shots that connected seemed to barely slow the human craft down. Focus fire on their capital ships, he ordered. Ignore the fighters, it was a mistake. While his weapons targeted the 3 large human vessels, the fighters tore through his fleet like claws through flesh. 2 more Drakkar ships went dark, their engines dead, their crews abandoning them. Then the human capital ships returned fire. The weapons were unlike anything in the Drakkar arsenal. Rails that launched solid projectiles at a fraction of light speed. Missiles that moved with their own intelligence. Energy beams that cut through shields like they were not even there. They're not fighting like a species that just got into space, Brix's tactical officer said. They fight like they've been doing this for centuries. Anne Rodriguez watched the Drakkar formation break apart. They were trying to scatter now, but it was too late. Her ships had them locked in a kill zone. Deploy boarding teams to vessels Baker 7 and Baker 12, she ordered. Those ships are close to civilian centers. I want them taken intact. Captain Grant felt the transport shudder as it launched from the flagship. Around him, his Marines checked their weapons one last time. They were heading for a Drakkar ship that hung in low orbit over a Chiri city. Intelligence said the Drakkar were using it as a command post. The transport approached the enemy vessel at high speed, and Grant activated the magnetic clamps on his boots. The side door opened to hard vacuum. Most species would have died instantly. The Marines just walked out into space. They crossed the gap using thruster packs, moving like they had done this 1,000 times before. Because they had. Grant hit the Drakkar hull first and planted a breaching charge. The explosion was silent in the void, opening a hole into the ship's interior. The Marines poured through. Inside the Drakkar vessel, warriors scrambled to respond. They had never been boarded before. They were the ones who did the boarding. These humans moved through the corridors with terrifying efficiency, their weapons cutting down anything that raised a gun. Grant led his team toward the command center. A Drakkar officer tried to seal the blast doors. Grant simply tore through them with a plasma cutter. The Drakkar inside stared at the human in shock. Your ship is now under human control, Grant said in translated Drakkar. Order your troops on the surface to stand down. The officer hissed defiance and reached for a weapon. He did not complete the motion. Down in the shelters, Dr. Wennick heard the fighting move overhead. The Drakkar guards had received new orders and were retreating. The Chiri refugees did not know what was happening. Some thought the Drakkar were leaving. Others feared something worse was coming. Then the shelter door opened and a human walked in. The Chiri screamed and pushed backward. The human was massive, covered in armor that made him look like a walking tank. His face was visible through a clear helmet and his eyes scanned the crowd. Is anyone injured? The human asked in perfect Chiri. No one answered. They were too terrified. The human removed his helmet, revealing features that were alien but somehow familiar. Predator eyes that faced forward. Flat teeth that could bite and tear, but his expression was gentle. My name is Sam, I'm a medic. We're here to help. A Chiri child, too young to know fear, approached the human. Sam knelt down, making himself smaller, less threatening. He reached into his pack and pulled out a medical scanner. You're safe now, Sam said softly. We won't let anything hurt you. Dr. Wennick watched in amazement as the human worked. His hands were steady despite the battle raging above. He treated injuries with care and skill, speaking quietly to each patient. This was a Deathworlder, this creature who showed such gentleness. In orbit, the battle was ending. Commander Brix's fleet had been reduced to half strength. His warriors were being captured or killed by humans who seemed to feel no fear. He watched a human fighter pilot eject from her damaged craft, survive in hard vacuum for 3 minutes, and get rescued by a teammate. They were not normal. They were something evolution had crafted specifically for war. Retreat, Brix finally ordered. All ships jumped to hyperspace, but Anne Rodriguez had anticipated this. Her ships had been slowly cutting off escape routes. When the Drakkar tried to flee, they found human vessels waiting. You came here to take a world that wasn't yours, Anne transmitted to Brix. You threatened civilians. Now you'll face the consequences. Brix's command ship shuddered under concentrated fire. His shields were failing. His engines were damaged. Around him, his fleet was dying. On Loomis 7, Ambassador Tillis received a transmission from the human flagship. Ambassador, this is Commander Rodriguez. We've cleared the orbital space. My Marines are securing surface positions. Your people are safe. Tillis felt his legs weaken with relief.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Don't thank me yet, Anne replied. This was just the first wave. The Drakkar Empire will send more ships. We need to talk about what comes next. In the shelter, Dr. Wennick watched the human medic treat his people. Sam had found food in his pack and was sharing it with the children. The cheery elders watched in confusion as the terrible Deathworlder made their children laugh. Captain Grant's Marines had secured every Drakkar position in the city. They moved through streets, checking buildings, ensuring no enemy soldiers remained. The cheery civilians watched them from windows, still afraid, still uncertain. Yuki landed her fighter in a cheery spaceport, her craft smoking from multiple hits. She climbed out and surveyed the damage. The hull was scorched, systems were failing, but she had made it. Around her, other fighters touched down in various states of damage. They had won. Above the planet, Anne Rodriguez looked at the tactical display. 15 Drakkar ships were captured, 20 were destroyed, 5 had managed to escape into hyperspace. Commander Brix's command ship was drifting, powerless, waiting for boarding teams. "Send a message to Earth," Anne ordered. "Mission successful. Civilian casualties minimal. We have control of Loomis 7. But even as she spoke, her sensors officer called out a warning. "Commander, we have new contacts jumping in system. Multiple signatures. It's a fleet." Anne's hand moved to her weapons controls. If the Drakkar Empire had sent reinforcements this quickly, the real battle was about to begin. The new fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of angry insects. Commander Anne Rodriguez counted 68 vessels on her tactical display. The signatures matched Drakkar Empire specifications. They had called for reinforcements faster than she expected. Her 3 ships, already damaged from the first battle, now faced overwhelming odds. "All hands to battle stations," she ordered calmly. "Launch all remaining fighters. Captain Grant, how long until your Marines can return to ships?" 30 minutes minimum," Grant's voice came through the communication system. "We're scattered across the surface." Anne did not have 30 minutes. The Drakkar fleet was already accelerating toward Loomis 7. But she had known this might happen. She had prepared for it. Tactical Initiate Protocol Hornet's Nest. Her crew moved with practiced efficiency. Over the past 3 days while traveling to Loomis 7, they had not been idle. They had manufactured thousands of autonomous mines using raw materials from their ship's stores. Now those mines activated across the orbital space, invisible until something came close. The approaching Drakkar fleet did not see them until it was too late. The first explosion tore through a Drakkar destroyer. Then another. Then 5 more in rapid succession. The neat formation broke apart as ships tried to evade, only to drift into more mines. In 30 seconds, the Drakkar lost 12 vessels. On the Drakkar flagship, Fleet Commander Naris watched his ships die and felt something he had not experienced in decades of warfare. Doubt. These humans had mined an entire orbital plane in 3 days. The amount of coordination and resources required was staggering. "All ships, weapons free," Naris commanded. "Destroy anything that moves." But the humans were not where he expected them to be. Anne's ships had used the mine explosions as cover to reposition. Now they struck from 3 different vectors, catching the Drakkar in a crossfire. Yuki Tanaka launched from the surface in her repaired fighter. The mechanics had worked miracles to get her bird flying again, but it was held together with spare parts and hope. Around her, the remaining fighter pilots formed up. They were outnumbered 10 to 1. "Standard odds for a Tuesday. Raptor Squadron, target their carrier groups," she transmitted. "Keep their fighters busy." The human fighters accelerated to combat speed. The G-forces would have killed any other species. The human pilots just gritted their teeth and flew. Down on Loomis 7, Dr. Wennick watched the battle through a observation scope. The human medic Sam stood beside him, his expression unreadable. "Your people are going to die up there," Wennick said quietly. "There are too many enemy ships," Sam smiled. "You don't know much about humans, do you? We're very good at fighting when we're outnumbered. It's kind of our specialty." Ambassador Tillis was receiving the same tactical data in the diplomatic center. The numbers were clear. The humans could not win this battle. They should retreat, save themselves, leave the Cheery to their fate. It was the logical choice, but the human ships were not retreating. They were attacking. Captain Grant and his Marines had commandeered Cheery transport vehicles to reach their extraction point. The streets were crowded with civilians who had emerged from shelters, watching the sky with a mixture of hope and terror. "Move faster," Grant urged his driver. "Our people need us." A young Cheery ran alongside their vehicle. "Are you really going back up there?" "To fight all those ships." Grant looked at the child. "We answered your distress call. We're not leaving until the job is done." In orbit, Anne's flagship shuddered under enemy fire. Her shields were at 40%. Two of her main weapons were offline. The Drakkar were concentrating fire, trying to eliminate the human command ship first. "Divert power from life support to shields," she ordered. "We can hold our breath for a while." The crew complied without hesitation. The ship's atmosphere began venting into space, but the shields strengthened. Anne checked her oxygen timer. They had 12 minutes before they would need to reseal the ship. That was plenty of time. Fleet Commander Naris could not understand what he was seeing. The human ship was venting atmosphere, sacrificing life support for combat power. What kind of species did that? What kind of commander asked their crew to suffocate slowly just to stay in the fight? Then he understood. They were not planning to suffocate. They were planning to win in less than 12 minutes. The human flagship accelerated directly at the Drakkar formation. Every weapon firing, every missile launching. It was a suicide run, and it was working. Drakkar ships scattered to avoid the assault, breaking their own formation, creating gaps in their defensive positions, gaps that Yuki and her fighters exploited mercilessly. All wings hit their flanks, Yuki ordered. Her fighter danced through incoming fire, her hands moving faster than thought. A Drakkar interceptor tried to match her maneuvers and instead tore itself apart from the stress. Human pilots could handle G-forces that destroyed other species' ships from the inside out. On the surface, Captain Grant's transport reached the spaceport. His Marines rushed aboard their assault ships, strapping in even as the vessels launched. They punched through the atmosphere at speeds that should have burned the ships to slag. The Cheery, watching from below, saw trails, a fire arc into space, and wondered if the humans felt fear at all. Dr. Wennick had his answer. When Sam removed a small device from his armor, it was a picture, slightly worn, showing a woman and two small children. "My family," Sam explained. "Back on Earth. I haven't seen them in 8 months." He smiled. "But they understand. When someone calls for help, we answer. It's who we are." Wennick felt something shift in his understanding. These were not monsters. These were people who had chosen to be far from home, to risk everything because strangers needed help. In space, Anne's timer showed 4 minutes of oxygen remaining. Her ship was surrounded by Drakkar vessels taking fire from all sides. But her crew worked in perfect silence, no air to carry voices, using hand signals and displays to coordinate. The second human warship swung around a Drakkar battleship and fired its main cannon at point-blank range. The enemy vessel split in half. The third human ship was locked in a brutal exchange with 3 Drakkar cruisers, trading shot for shot, neither side willing to break off. Grant's Marine transports arrived in the middle of the chaos. Instead of returning to the human ships, they attacked the Drakkar fleet directly. The transports were not built for space combat, but the Marines had mounted weapons on every available surface. They flew straight at enemy ships and started boarding them. Fleet Commander Naris watched in disbelief as human soldiers cut their way into his vessels in the middle of a fleet battle. They fought through corridors while explosions rocked the ships around them. They seized control rooms while the vessels were still firing weapons. "They're insane," his tactical officer whispered. Naris did not disagree, but he also recognized what he was seeing. This was not insanity. This was a species that had evolved fighting every day for survival. A species where danger was so common that they had learned to function through it, to think clearly while everything around them tried to kill them. Anne's oxygen timer reached 0. Her vision started to narrow. The bridge crew was slumping at their stations. Then fresh air flooded the compartment. They had sealed the ship and restored life support with 15 seconds to spare. "Status report," Anne gasped. "Enemy fleet down to 40 ships. They're requesting terms of surrender." Anne allowed herself a small smile. "Tell them to withdraw to the edge of the system and wait. Any ship that tries to approach Loomis 7 will be destroyed." Yuki brought her fighter back to the Cheery spaceport, her fuel almost gone, her weapons empty. She had flown for 6 hours straight through the most intense combat of her life. As she climbed out of the cockpit, her hands were shaking from exhaustion. A group of Cheery children approached her carefully. One held out a piece of fruit, a traditional offering of respect in their culture. "Thank you for saving us," the child said. Yuki took the fruit with both hands and bowed. "We're honored to help." Ambassador Tillis watched the Drakkar fleet retreat. The humans had done the impossible. 3 ships had defeated 70. 3 ships crewed by a species that should not even be out here in the stars. His communication panel blinked. A new signal was arriving from the edge of the system. The Ven collective fleet had finally arrived 5 days late, exactly as predicted, and they were not happy to see humans in their territory. Commander Anne Rodriguez read the incoming transmission and sighed. The Drakkar had been the easy part. Now came the politics. On Loomis 7, Dr. Wennick helped Sam tend to wounded civilians. The human worked tirelessly, never complaining, never stopping. When a cheery elder asked him why humans had come to help strangers, Sam paused in his work. "Because no one helped us when we needed it," he said quietly. "We spent thousands of years alone on our world, fighting to survive, wondering if anyone else was out there. Now we know the answer, and we're making sure no one else has to face their enemies alone." The elder touched Sam's arm gently. "You are not what we expected, human." Sam smiled. "We get that a lot." The Ven collective fleet arrived in perfect formation. 60 pristine warships that had never seen real combat. High Coordinator Pellis commanded the fleet from his flagship, watching the tactical displays with growing confusion. The cheery distress call had come 5 days ago. The Ven had assembled their forces and traveled as quickly as protocol allowed. They expected to find Loomis 7 under siege, the cheery desperate for rescue. Instead, they found human ships in orbit and Drakkar vessels fleeing into deep space. "Scan those ships," Pellis ordered. "Confirm their origin." His science officer worked the instruments, then looked up with wide eyes. "Sir, they're human. From Earth, the restricted world." Pellis felt his blood chill. "Humans were not supposed to be here." Earth was under quarantine by order of the Galactic Council. The species was too dangerous, too unpredictable. They were sealed on their world for the safety of civilized space. "How did they get faster than light technology?" he demanded. No one had an answer. On the human flagship, Commander Anne Rodriguez received the Ven transmission. The tone was not friendly. "Human vessels, this is High Coordinator Pellis of the Ven Collective. You are in violation of quarantine protocols. You will power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted from this system immediately." Anne read the message twice, then looked at her exhausted crew. They had just fought 2 battles to save a species they had never met. They had lost good people, and now they were being ordered to leave like criminals. "Transmit a response," she said. "Tell them we received a distress call and responded. Tell them we're not leaving until we're sure the Cheery are secure." Pellis read the human reply and felt anger rise. They dared to refuse? They dared to question Ven authority? "Transmit to all channels," he ordered. "The humans are rogue elements operating outside galactic law. Any species that harbors them or accepts their assistance will face economic sanctions." On Loomis 7, Ambassador Tillis received both transmissions. He read them in growing horror. The Ven were his people's oldest allies. They had protected the Cheery for 300 years, but they had also arrived 5 days late, after the humans had already saved his world. His communication panel showed an incoming call from the Cheery Council. "The 7 colony worlds were in emergency session." "Ambassador," Council Leader Viren said, her antennae trembling with stress. "The Ven are demanding we reject human assistance. They say we must choose between their friendship and human contamination." Tillis looked out his window at the human ships. They were battered and scarred from battle. Crews were making repairs in hard vacuum. Fighters limped back to carriers on emergency power. These were not conquerors. These were defenders who had bled for strangers. "What does the Council want me to do?" Tillis asked quietly. "We don't know," Viren admitted. "The Ven have been our allies for centuries, but the humans saved us. We're terrified of both choices." In the human medical bay, Dr. Wennick worked alongside Sam and the other human medics. They were treating casualties from both battles, human and Cheery, together. Wennick had learned more about human biology in the past day than he had thought possible. "Your healing rate is remarkable," he said, watching skin knit together on a wounded Marine's arm. "This injury would take a Cheery months to heal." Sam checked the bandage. "We evolved on a world where getting injured was a daily occurrence. Fast healing was survival." A communication came through on Sam's device. He read it and his expression hardened. "The Ven want us gone," he said to Wennick. "They're threatening your people with sanctions if you accept our help." Wennick felt torn. The Ven had resources the Cheery needed: trade agreements, defense pacts, security guarantees. Losing all that would devastate the 7 colony worlds. But the humans had answered when called. The Ven had not. Captain Grant gathered his Marines in the main hangar. They were cleaning weapons, repairing armor, tending to minor injuries. These soldiers had fought through 2 impossible battles. Now they faced a new challenge. "Listen up," Grant said. "The Venn Collective wants us to leave. They're claiming we violated some quarantine. Command is evaluating options. We going to fight them too?" one Marine asked. Grant shook his head. "No, we don't fight people for political reasons. We came here to help the Cheery. If they want us to leave, we leave." The Marines accepted this without argument. They were warriors, but they were not conquerors. Pilot Yuki Tanaka sat in her damaged fighter running diagnostics. The craft needed major repairs that could only be done at a proper facility. Earth was 3 weeks away at maximum speed. Her fighter might not make it. A young Cheery mechanic approached hesitantly. "Excuse me, pilot. I've been studying your ship. I think I can help with the repairs." Yuki looked at the delicate insectoid engineer. "You know human technology?" "I'm learning," the Cheery said. "Your systems are different but logical. I want to help. You saved our world." Yuki smiled and handed him a tool. "Then let's get to work." High Coordinator Pellis grew more frustrated as his transmissions went unanswered. The humans were ignoring him. The Cheery were debating. No one seemed to understand the danger these Deathworlders represented. "Send a direct message to the human commander," he ordered. "Tell her I want to speak face to face." Anne received the request and considered refusing. But she was curious about these Venn who had abandoned their allies. She agreed to a meeting aboard a neutral station orbiting Loomis 7. The meeting room was designed for multiple species. Anne entered wearing her dress uniform, unarmed, followed only by Captain Grant. Pellis arrived with a full security detail, their weapons obvious. "Commander Rodriguez," Pellis began formally, "you and your people are in violation of quarantine protocols established by the Galactic Council. Earth is a restricted world. Your species is not authorized for interstellar travel." Anne met his gaze calmly. "We received a distress call." We responded. "That's not a crime where I come from." "You had no right to be in this sector of space," Pellis insisted. "Your presence endangers civilized species." "We just saved a civilized species," Grant interjected. "Where were you?" Pellis bristled. "The Venn Collective has protected the Cheery for 3 centuries. We have trade agreements, defense pacts, cultural exchanges. We don't need violent primitives interfering in our affairs." Anne leaned forward. "Then why did it take you 5 days to respond to their emergency?" "We came from further away and got here first." "We followed proper protocols," Pellis said stiffly. "We assembled an appropriate force. We prepared for multiple scenarios." "You took your time while people died," Anne replied. "We didn't have that luxury. We came with what we had and we got the job done." Pellis stood abruptly. "This discussion is over. You will leave this system within 24 hours or face consequences." "What consequences?" Anne asked calmly. "Are you planning to attack us?" "Because we just defeated a Drakkar fleet twice your size." The threat hung in the air. Pellis realized his mistake. The Venn fleet was larger than the human force, but his ships had never fought a real battle. The humans had just proven themselves against overwhelming odds. "Economic sanctions," Pellis said finally. "Against any species that harbors you." Anne stood to leave. "Then you better talk to the Cheery. This is their decision, not ours." On Loomis 7, Ambassador Tillis called an emergency meeting with the Council. The vote would determine their future. Alliance with the Venn meant security and stability. Alliance with the humans meant uncertainty and risk. Dr. Wennick spoke to the Council via remote transmission. "I've worked with the humans. They're not what the databases say. They're not monsters. They're people who believe in helping others." Council leader Viren listened to testimony from dozens of Cheery who had encountered humans, the medic who had treated their children, the pilots who had risked everything to protect their cities, the Marines who had shown restraint and compassion even in combat. The vote was called. In the human flagship, Anne waited for the decision. Her crew was ready to depart if ordered. They would not stay where they were not wanted. Captain Grant sat with his Marines uncertain for the first time in years. They had done everything right. They had saved lives, defeated enemies, treated civilians with respect, and now they might be cast out anyway because of fear. Yuki worked on her fighter alongside Cheery mechanics who had eagerly joined her. They asked endless questions about Earth, about human culture, about what it was like to fly through combat. She answered honestly, surprised by their genuine interest. The communication came through on all channels. Ambassador Tillis spoke, his voice steady despite his trembling antennae. The Cheery Coalition has voted. We formally request that humanity remain as our allies and defenders. We recognize that this decision may cost us our relationship with the Venn Collective. But we cannot turn away those who answered when we called. Anne felt something loosen in her chest. Relief, pride, hope. Acknowledged, Ambassador. We're honored to serve. High Coordinator Pellis received the news in stunned silence. The Cheery had chosen humans over the Venn. They had chosen uncertainty over stability. Implement sanctions immediately, he ordered, and send word to the Galactic Council. The human quarantine has been broken. They need to know what's out here. The Venn fleet departed, leaving Loomis 7 without the protection they had provided for 3 centuries. The Cheery watched them go with mixed feelings. Fear of the unknown, hope for the future. Anne addressed her crew. We're staying. That means we're committed to defending these people. Anyone who wants to return to Earth can take a shuttle. No judgment. Not a single person volunteered to leave. 3 weeks after the Venn departure, long-range sensors detected a new threat approaching Loomis 7. Commander Anne Rodriguez studied the readings with growing concern. A single massive vessel had jumped into the outer system. Its energy signature matched nothing in the human database. The ship was larger than a Drakkar battleship, bristling with weapons. Transmitting on all frequencies, her communications officer reported. They're identifying as a Drakkar Empire superweapon platform. Anne felt ice in her stomach. The Drakkar had sent everything they had in the first 2 battles. This was something new. Something worse. Get me Captain Grant and pilot Tanaka. Emergency briefing in 10 minutes. On Loomis 7, Dr. Wennick was teaching human emergency medicine to Cheery medical students when the alarm sounded. He looked at Sam, the human medic who had become his friend. Another attack? Wennick asked. Sam checked his military communication device. His face went pale. Worse. The Drakkar sent a planet killer. The word spread through the city like poison. A planet killer, a weapon designed to crack worlds apart from orbit. The Cheery had heard stories of such weapons but never believed they would face one. Ambassador Tillis received the tactical data in his office. The weapon would take 8 hours to charge. Once fired, nothing could stop it. Loomis 7 would be destroyed. 7 billion Cheery would die. He contacted Commander Rodriguez immediately. You need to evacuate. Take your ships and leave. There's no point in all of us dying. Anne's response was instant. We're not leaving. We're going to stop that weapon. How? It's one ship, but it's massive. Your vessels are already damaged from the previous battles. We'll find a way. We always do. In the briefing room, Anne addressed her senior staff. The holographic display showed the Drakkar weapon platform in detail. It was a fortress designed to withstand entire fleets while it charged its main gun. We have 8 hours, Anne said. We need to destroy that platform before it fires. Options? Captain Grant studied the schematics. A direct assault would take too long. That thing has too many defenses. We'd be torn apart before we got close. Pilot Yuki Tanaka pointed to a section of the display. There. The power conduits feeding the main weapon. If we could damage those, the weapon couldn't fire. Those conduits are inside the ship, Anne noted. Deep inside. We'd need to board it. Then we board it, Grant said simply. My Marines can handle it. Anne looked at her tactical officer. How many ships would we need to sacrifice to get a boarding team close enough? The officer ran calculations. At least 1 capital ship. Maybe 2. The defensive fire is too heavy. The room fell silent. They all understood what that meant. Hundreds of crew members would die just to get the Marines close enough to attempt the mission. And even then, success was not guaranteed. I'll lead the boarding team, Grant said. Give me 50 Marines? We'll get to those conduits, Yuki stood. I'll fly cover. My squadron can keep their fighters busy. Anne looked at her people. They were volunteering for a suicide mission without hesitation. This was what Earth had created. Not monsters, not conquerors, people who stood between the innocent and destruction, no matter the cost. Approved, she said quietly. Prepare for assault. We launch in 4 hours. On Loomis 7, the evacuation began. The Cheery tried to move their population to shelters, though everyone knew shelters would not help against a planet killer. Dr. Wennick organized medical teams, preparing for casualties he hoped would never come. Sam approached him with a request. I'm going with the boarding team. I need you to take over the medical coordination. Wennick grabbed Sam's arm. You don't have to do this. You're a medic, not a combat soldier. Every Marine going on that mission might need medical care, Sam replied. I can't let them go without support. Wennick understood then. This was what humans did. They stood together. They protected each other, even unto death. The human fleet began its approach to the weapon platform. 2 capital ships moved ahead, their shields at maximum. Behind them, assault transports carrying Grant's Marines waited for an opening. Yuki and her squadron launched into the black. Her fighter was still patched together from the previous battles, but it would fly. That was all she needed. The Drakkar platform detected the approaching fleet and opened fire. Weapons that could vaporize a city block struck the human shields. The capital ship shuddered but held. Keep moving, Anne ordered from her flagship. Get those Marines close. Inside the lead capital ship, alarms screamed as systems failed. The shields were at 30%. 20%. The hull was starting to buckle under the assault. All crew, abandon ship, the captain ordered. Marines, launch your transports now. Grant felt his transport detach from the dying vessel. Around him, his Marines checked their weapons one final time. Sam sat among them, medical gear packed and ready. Remember the mission, Grant said over the squad channel. Get to the power conduits. Destroy them. Nothing else matters. The transports accelerated toward the Drakkar platform while the capital ship behind them exploded, sacrificing itself to cover their approach. Hundreds of crew members died in that blast, buying seconds for the Marines to get closer. Yuki's fighters engaged the platform's defensive interceptors. The enemy pilots were good, but they had never faced humans before. Yuki led her squadron through impossible maneuvers, drawing fire away from the Marine transports. Her wingman took a direct hit and exploded. Then another. The squadron was being torn apart, but they held the line. Grant's transport struck the platform's hull and magnetic clamps engaged. Breaching charges detonated, opening a hole into the interior. The Marines poured through into a storm of enemy fire. Drakkar soldiers had prepared for borders this time. They met the humans with overwhelming force, but the Marines had trained for exactly this scenario. They fought through corridors while explosions rocked the massive ship around them. Sam moved with the combat teams, treating wounded Marines under fire. A Drakkar grenade detonated nearby and shrapnel tore through his leg. He kept working, ignoring the pain, focusing on keeping others alive. Deep in the platform, Commander Brix watched the battle through internal sensors. He had survived the previous encounters with humans, learned from them. This time he had prepared better defenses. The humans were making progress, but they were dying by the dozen, and the weapon was still charging. 5 hours until it fired. Grant's team reached a major intersection and found it heavily defended. Automated turrets, Drakkar elite warriors, energy barriers. It was a kill box designed to stop any assault. We need to go through, Grant said. No other route. The Marines knew what that meant. Frontal assault into overwhelming fire. Casualties would be catastrophic. But the mission came first. For Loomis 7, one Marine said. For everyone who called for help. Another added. They charged. The firefight was brutal and short. Half the Marines died in the first 30 seconds. But they kept moving, kept firing, kept pushing forward. The survivors broke through the intersection and continued deeper into the ship. Sam was hit again, this time in the shoulder. He could barely hold his medical scanner, but he refused to stop. A young Marine was bleeding out from a chest wound. Sam worked frantically, his own blood mixing with his patient's. Stay with me, Sam urged. Don't you dare die on me. Outside, Yuki's squadron was down to 6 fighters. They had destroyed dozens of enemy interceptors, but more kept coming. Her fuel was nearly gone. Her weapons were overheating. She was flying on emergency power and determination alone. All wings fall back, she ordered. We've done all we can, but her pilots refused. We leave when the Marines complete their mission. Not before. Yuki felt pride cut through her exhaustion. This was humanity. This was what Earth had given the galaxy. Grant reached the power conduit chamber with 12 Marines remaining. The room was massive, filled with pulsing energy channels that fed the planet-killer weapon. Destroying them would be simple. Surviving the explosion would be impossible. Plant the charges, Grant ordered. Set timers for 5 minutes. That gives us time to evacuate. His technical specialist shook her head. The Drakkar can disarm standard charges in 3 minutes. We'd need someone to stay and manually detonate. Grant understood immediately. I'll do it. Everyone else fall back to the transports. Sam stepped forward. With respect, Captain, you're needed to lead the evacuation. I'll stay. Sam, you're a medic, not a demolitions expert. I can push a button, Sam said with a slight smile. And someone should stay with the wounded who can't move. There were 3 Marines too injured to walk. Sam had stabilized them, but they could not be carried through the fighting retreat. Someone needed to stay with them. Someone needed to ensure the mission succeeded. Grant gripped Sam's shoulder. It's been an honor. The honor was mine, Sam replied. The remaining Marines retreated, fighting through Drakkar forces that tried to stop them. Grant led them back to the transports, leaving Sam alone in the conduit chamber with 3 dying Marines. Sam worked to make his patients comfortable, while the demolition charges blinked on the conduit walls. He checked his communication device and sent a final message to Earth, to his family, telling them he loved them, telling them he was proud to serve. Then he sat down and waited. Anne watched from her flagship as the Marine transports detached from the platform and accelerated away. She counted the survivors. 42 Marines out of 50. Captain Grant had made it. But Sam's signal was still inside the platform. Commander, her communications officer said quietly. Message from the medic. He's staying to ensure detonation. Anne closed her eyes. Another good person giving everything. The charges detonated. The power conduits exploded in a cascade of energy that tore through the platform's interior. The planet killer weapon went dark. The massive ship began breaking apart as secondary explosions rippled through its structure. On Loomis 7, millions of Cheery watched the platform die. They would never know Sam's name. They would never see his face. But they would live because he had stayed behind. Dr. Wennick received the news and felt something break inside him. His friend was gone. The gentle human who had shown such care for Cheery children. The medic who had taught him so much. Gone. 6 months after the battle, Ambassador Tillis stood in the central plaza of Loomis 7's capital city. The memorial rose 30 meters into the sky, constructed from material salvaged from the destroyed Drakkar platform. It bore the names of every human who had died defending the Cheery homeworld. 247 names carved in stone that would last 1,000 years. At the base of the memorial, the inscription read in both human English and Cheery script, "They came when called." They stayed when needed. They gave everything when asked for nothing. Tillis touched Sam's name gently. The medic had become a symbol among the Cheery people. Schools taught his story. Children left flowers at the memorial. A medical academy had been named in his honor. Dr. Wennick approached, carrying a small wooden box. Inside was the picture Sam had shown him during the battle. The family on Earth who had lost a father, a husband. Wennick had written to them, trying to explain what their sacrifice had meant. Trying to find words adequate for such grief, they had written back. The message was simple. We are proud. Tell the Cheery people we consider them family now. The human diplomatic delegation arrives today, Wennick said. Earth is sending an ambassador, Tillis nodded. The relationship between humanity and the Cheery coalition had grown stronger each day. Trade agreements were being negotiated. Cultural exchanges planned. Defense pacts formalized. The Cheery had chosen their path and they had not looked back. At the spaceport, Commander Anne Rodriguez prepared to return to Earth. Her tour of duty was complete. New ships and fresh crews were arriving to replace her battered fleet. She had stayed long enough to see the alliance established, to ensure the Cheery were safe. Captain Grant stood beside her, also preparing to leave. His Marines had trained Cheery security forces for 6 months. The insectoid soldiers would never be warriors like humans, but they had learned to defend themselves. That was enough. You think we made the right choice? Grant asked. Getting involved out here? Anne watched Cheery civilians going about their daily lives. Children playing in parks, markets bustling with activity, art galleries displaying work that blended human and Cheery styles. Life continuing because they had answered a call. Yes, she said simply. We made the right choice. Pilot Yuki Tanaka had chosen to stay. She was now an instructor at the Cheery Flight Academy, teaching a new generation of pilots. Her students would never fly like humans, their bodies could not handle the forces. But they could learn tactics, strategy, courage. One of her students approached nervously. Instructor Tanaka, is it true you once flew through combat with only one engine working? Yuki smiled. Both engines were damaged. But the mission required completion. So I adapted. Were you afraid? Terrified, Yuki admitted. Fear doesn't mean you stop. It means you acknowledge the danger and continue anyway. The student seemed to take comfort in this. Fear was acceptable. Stopping was not. Across the galaxy, the news of humanity's intervention had spread. The Venn Collective had attempted to suppress the information, but too many species had heard the story. Humans had broken quarantine. Humans had defeated the Drakkar Empire in multiple engagements. Humans had sacrificed themselves to save strangers. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session to address the situation. High Coordinator Pellis presented the case for renewed quarantine enforcement. The humans are dangerous, he argued. They fight with a ferocity that threatens the stability of civilized space. They must be contained, but other voices disagreed. Representatives from species that had heard about Loomis 7 questioned why dangerous warriors would die to protect civilians they had never met. Why conquerors would train defenders instead of claiming territory. The debate continued for weeks. Finally, a compromise was reached. Earth would not be forcibly quarantined, but humanity would be watched closely. Any aggressive expansion would be met with united resistance. It was not the welcome humanity had hoped for, but it was better than isolation. On Earth, the news of Sam's death had struck hard. Memorial services were held across the planet. His family was honored by world leaders, but his children asked questions that no one could fully answer. Why did Daddy go so far away? His daughter asked. Sam's wife held her close. Because someone called for help. And your father believed that when someone calls for help, you answer, no matter how far away they are. The response to Sam's sacrifice was not grief alone. Across Earth, enlistment in the space services increased by 300%. Young people wanted to serve like Sam had served. They wanted to be the ones who answered the call. Humanity had found its purpose among the stars. Not conquest, not expansion. Protection. Ambassador Tillis received a transmission from an unexpected source. A small colony on the edge of known space under attack by raiders. They had heard about what humans did for the Cheery. They were calling for help. Tillis forwarded the message to the human diplomatic delegation. The response came within minutes. Fleet dispatched. Arrival in 48 hours. It was happening again, somewhere out there. Humans were already moving toward danger, toward strangers who needed protection. The pattern was establishing itself. Dr. Wennick published his research on human psychology and physiology. The paper became required reading across multiple species. He described humans not as Deathworlders to be feared, but as survivors who had learned to channel their capabilities toward protection rather than destruction. Humans evolved in constant danger, he wrote. They developed strength, endurance, and tactical thinking to survive. But they also developed empathy, cooperation, and loyalty. They are dangerous, yes, but they are dangerous to threats, not to friends. The paper changed minds across the galaxy. Species began requesting human assistance with security issues. Pirates found their hunting grounds suddenly patrolled by human warships. Slavers discovered that taking captives from protected worlds resulted in human retribution. A new phrase entered galactic common language. The humans are coming. For the innocent, it was a promise of rescue. For the guilty, it was a warning of judgment. Captain Grant returned to Earth briefly before accepting a new assignment. He was to command a rapid response force, ships positioned to answer distress calls across multiple sectors. The mission was exactly what he had trained for his entire life. His Marines volunteered to join him without hesitation. They had tasted what it meant to protect others. They could not go back to a life without purpose. Commander Ann Rodriguez was promoted to admiral and given command of Earth's expanding defensive fleet. She spent her days coordinating responses to calls for help, managing diplomatic relations, and training new commanders. At night, she looked at the memorial board in her office, the names of everyone who had died under her command. She made a promise to each of them. Their sacrifice would not be forgotten. Their example would inspire others. The Cheery Coalition prospered under human protection. Trade flourished. Art and science advanced. The 7 colony worlds grew confident in their security. They no longer feared invasion because they knew humans would come, but they never took that protection for granted. Every Cheery child learned about Sam and the others who had died for them. Every public building displayed the memorial inscription. Every military academy taught the story of how humanity had answered when called. Ambassador Tillis retired after 3 decades of service. His replacement was younger, more energetic, but carried the same commitment to the human alliance. The relationship between Earth and the Chiri had become the foundation for a new model of interstellar cooperation. 1 year after the battle for Loomis 7, Tillis visited Earth for the first time. He traveled to Sam's hometown, met his family, saw where the medic had grown up. It was a peaceful place, green and quiet. Hard to imagine warriors coming from such serenity. Sam's daughter, now older, showed Tillis her father's medals. "Are there really aliens who tell stories about my dad?" "Millions of them," Tillis said gently. "Children across 7 worlds know his name. They know he came to help when we needed it most." She touched the medals thoughtfully. "I want to be like him when I grow up. I want to help people too." Tillis felt his antennae tremble with emotion. This was humanity's real strength. Not their physical capabilities or tactical brilliance. Their ability to inspire others to be better, to do more, to care about strangers as if they were family. The memorial on Loomis 7 grew over time as more names were added. Not all deaths in battle. Some were humans who had stayed to help rebuild, to teach, to serve. They had made the Chiri worlds their second home. And across the galaxy, more memorials began to appear, on worlds rescued from pirates, on colonies saved from natural disasters, on stations protected from raiders. Each memorial telling the same story. Humans had come when called. The Venn Collective watched this expansion with concern. Their influence was waning as species turned to human protection instead. But they could not argue with the results. Piracy decreased. Slavery became rarer. Aggressive empires found their expansion checked by human intervention. High Coordinator Pellis eventually admitted, in a private moment, that perhaps humanity's emergence was not entirely negative. Perhaps the galaxy needed protectors who were willing to sacrifice for others. The Galactic Council remained divided on humanity. Some species welcomed them. Others remained fearful, but none could deny the change humans had brought. The strong could no longer prey on the weak without consequence. Ambassador Tillis, in his final public speech before retirement, addressed the Chiri people with words that were broadcast across multiple worlds. "We sent a call for help to allies who did not come. Instead, we received Deathworlders who answered without hesitation. We feared them because we did not understand them. Now we know the truth. Humanity is dangerous, yes, but they are dangerous to those who threaten the innocent. They are dangerous to those who prey on the weak. They are dangerous to those who believe might makes right. For those of us who seek only peace and prosperity, humanity is not a threat. They are the best friends we could ever have." The words resonated across the galaxy. More species began opening diplomatic channels with Earth. More alliances were formed. More calls for help were answered. And on Earth, in military academies and training centers, new recruits learned about Loomis 7. They learned about Commander Rodriguez's tactical brilliance, Captain Grant's courage, Yuki's flying, Sam's sacrifice. They learned that being human meant more than physical strength. It meant standing up for those who could not stand for themselves. It meant answering calls for help even when it was dangerous. It meant being willing to give everything for people you had never met. The instructors always ended with the same question: "When someone calls for help, what do we do?" And the recruits answered in one voice: "We come, always." Somewhere in deep space, another distress call echoed through the void. A small research station under attack, a mining colony facing catastrophe, a transport ship in distress, and before the message finished transmitting, human ships were already calculating jump coordinates, already preparing for combat, already moving toward the danger, because that was what humans did. They came when called. They stayed when needed. They gave everything when asked for nothing. The galaxy had feared the Deathworlders. Now it was learning to trust them. And slowly, cautiously, species across the stars began to understand. Humanity had not come to conquer. They had come to protect. And that made all the difference.
The old cargo ship floated in space like a wounded whale. Its hull, marked with dents and patches, told stories of decades spent hauling goods across the stars. Now, with weapons hastily bolted to its sides, it looked more like a child's attempt to turn a toy truck into a tank. This was the HMS Persistence, and it was humanity's last hope in this sector. Captain James Walker stood on the bridge, his weathered hands gripping the railing as he looked at the main screen. He wasn't supposed to be here. None of them were. But with the Empire pushing deeper into human space each day, the military had run out of proper warships. "Status report," he called out, his voice steady despite the doubt gnawing at his gut. "Main reactor is running at 85% capacity, sir," replied Engineer Mike Thompson from his station. The old man's fingers danced across his console, coaxing power from systems that should have been retired years ago. "She's not happy, but she's holding." Walker nodded. The ship's reactor was ancient technology, the kind that modern ships wouldn't be caught dead using. But they had no choice. Earth Command had ordered every space-worthy vessel to be converted for combat duty, regardless of its original purpose. "Weapons check," Walker ordered, turning to his makeshift tactical officer. Lisa Brown, who until 3 weeks ago had been coordinating cargo loading sequences, pulled up the weapons display. "Point defense systems are online, though the targeting computers are still glitchy." "Main guns." She paused, frowning. 3 out of 4 responding. The 4th one keeps trying to load cargo containers instead of shells. A few crew members chuckled. It wasn't really funny, but laughter helped keep the fear at bay. They all knew what was coming. Empire ships had been spotted in nearby systems, their advanced technology making quick work of human defenses. "Keep working on it," Walker said. "We need every gun we can get." The bridge crew returned to their tasks, each person trying to master systems they barely understood. The Persistence had been converted in just 2 weeks, with weapons and military hardware grafted onto civilian systems. Half the ship still thought it was a cargo hauler. Walker walked to the engineering station, where Thompson was muttering to himself as he adjusted power readings. "Mike, how's that reactor holding up really?" The engineer looked up, his gray eyes serious. "Honestly, sir, it's weird. These old fusion bottles were built tough, but this one's giving off readings I've never seen before. The radiation signature keeps shifting." "Is it dangerous?" Walker asked, thinking of his crew of 35 souls aboard this floating death trap. Thompson shook his head. "Not dangerous, just strange. It's like..." He paused, searching for words. "It's like the reactor's talking to itself, changing its output patterns randomly. Modern reactors are more efficient, but they're also more rigid in their operation. This old girl, she's got quirks." Before Walker could respond, the tactical station lit up with warnings. Lisa's voice cut through the bridge chatter. "Multiple contacts. Empire signatures detected at the edge of our range." Walker rushed to his command chair. "Show me." The main screen flickered to life, displaying tactical data. 5 Empire warships, their sleek hulls gleaming with advanced technology, were moving into the system. Each one of them could outgun the Persistence 10 times over. "Orders from command, sir," the communications officer called out. "We are to delay the enemy advance by any means necessary until reinforcements arrive." The bridge fell silent. They all knew what that meant. They were being sacrificed to buy time. Walker took a deep breath. "Alert all hands. Battle stations." As klaxons blared throughout the ship, Walker studied the tactical display. The Empire ships were moving in a standard attack formation, probably not even considering the old cargo ship a threat. That might be their only advantage. "Sir," Thompson's excited voice cut through the tension. "The reactor. I think I found something." "Make it quick, Mike." "The radiation signature, the way it keeps changing. I think we can use it. The Empire's targeting systems are designed to track modern reactor emissions. Ours is so old and weird, it might confuse them." Walker leaned forward. "Can you control these changes?" "Maybe." Thompson's fingers flew across his console. "If I route power through some of the old cargo handling systems, I can make us look like different types of ships, or even make us disappear completely from their scans." It wasn't much, but it was something. "Do it," Walker ordered. Lisa, what's the status of those cargo handling systems? Still trying to load shells, sir, but she paused, her eyes widening. Wait, if we're not going to use them for weapons, maybe we can use them for something else. The magnetic grapples were designed to move containers in zero. They could maybe catch incoming missiles. Walker felt a spark of hope. It was crazy, but they were already in an impossible situation. Make it happen. Everyone, listen up. We're not a warship, and we never will be. So let's stop trying to be one. We're a cargo hauler, and we're going to fight like one. The next hour was a flurry of activity as the crew repurposed systems never meant for combat. Cargo drones were programmed to act as decoys. Loading bay force fields were modified to provide extra shielding. Every trick and hack they could think of was thrown into the mix. The Empire ships drew closer, their first warning shots lighting up space around the Persistence. Walker watched his crew work, pride mixing with fear in his chest. They were about to find out if their improvised solutions would work, or if they'd all die in the cold vacuum of space. Enemy ships entering optimal firing range. Lisa reported, her voice steady. Walker straightened in his chair. Thompson, start your reactor tricks. Lisa, power up those grapples. Everyone else, remember your training and trust your shipmates. The Empire thinks we're just a broken-down cargo hauler. He allowed himself a small smile. Let's show them how dangerous a cargo hauler can be. As the first Empire missiles streaked toward them, the Persistence's reactor began its strange dance, its shifting signature making the ship flicker like a ghost on enemy scanners. The massive cargo grapples, never designed for combat, reached out into space like giant hands, ready to catch death itself. The battle for humanity's survival was about to begin, and it would start with a ship that had no right to win. But as Walker looked at his determined crew, he realized that sometimes the best weapons weren't the shiniest or newest. Sometimes they were the ones you made yourself, from whatever you had at hand. Thompson's voice rose above the battle station's alert. Sir, you need to see these readings. The reactor, it's doing something I've never seen before. It's adapting to what we need. Walker looked at the readings, not fully understanding them, but recognizing that they might have stumbled onto something important. Something that might just give humanity a fighting chance against the Empire's superior technology. Record everything, he ordered. Win or lose, other ships need to know what we discover here. He turned to face the main screen, where the Empire ships loomed ever larger. Now let's show them what this old hauler can do. The first Empire missile streaked through space, its targeting systems confused by the Persistence's shifting reactor signature. Thompson's trick was working, but they needed more than just good defense to survive this fight. Enemy missile incoming, Lisa called out, her hands hovering over the cargo grapple controls. Attempting intercept with grapple system. The massive electromagnetic grapple, designed to handle cargo containers weighing thousands of tons, reached out into space. As the missile approached, Lisa adjusted the grapple's field strength, trying to find the right setting to catch something moving at combat speeds. The grapple caught the missile. Instead of exploding, the weapon hung suspended in the electromagnetic field, its engine still burning. Got it, Lisa shouted, excitement breaking through her professional demeanor. The grapple's holding. Walker leaned forward in his command chair. Can you turn it around? A grin spread across Lisa's face as she understood his intention. Her fingers danced across the controls, and the grapple swung around, pointing the captured missile back at the Empire ships. With a few quick adjustments, she released the electromagnetic field. The missile shot back toward its source, its engines still at full power. The Empire ship, not expecting its own weapon to be returned, took a direct hit to its forward shields. Hit confirmed, Lisa reported. Enemy shields at 80%. The bridge crew cheered, but Walker kept his focus. Thompson, how's the reactor holding up? Better than expected, sir, the engineer replied. Each time we use the grapples, the reactor adjusts its output to match. It's like it's learning what we need. And I found something else in the cargo holds. What is it? The maintenance drones. We got about 50 of them, designed for hull repairs and cargo handling. With some quick reprogramming, we could use them as fighters. Walker considered this. The drones were tough, built to work in space, and their repair tools could probably do damage if used creatively. Do it. How long? Give me 10 minutes, Thompson said, already typing commands into his console. Another volley of Empire missiles approached. This time, Lisa was ready. The cargo grapples moved with more confidence, catching 2 missiles and sending them back toward different targets. The Empire ships scattered, breaking their formation. They're splitting up, Lisa reported, trying to surround us. Walker nodded. It was standard Empire tactics, but it might work in their favor. Thompson, those drones ready. First wave launching now, sir. From the Persistence's cargo holds, maintenance drones emerged like angry hornets. Their usual repair tools had been repurposed. Welding torches became weapons, magnetic clamps became grappling devices. They swarmed toward the nearest Empire ship, their small size making them hard to target. The Empire ship's point defense systems fired, but they were calibrated for missiles and fighters, not the erratic movements of maintenance drones. Several drones reached the ship's hull, their welding tools cutting into sensor arrays and weapons mounts. Sir, the sensor officer called out. I'm picking up a scout ship approaching from the system's edge. Empire design, probably here to observe. Walker saw an opportunity. Thompson, can you mask our signature completely? Make us disappear. For a few minutes, yes. The reactor's radiation pattern can match background space if I tune it just right. Do it. Lisa, pull back the drones. Let's show them our next trick. The maintenance drones retreated to the cargo holds as Thompson adjusted the reactor output. On enemy scanners, the Persistence seemed to fade away, becoming just another piece of space debris. The Empire scout ship moved closer, probably trying to figure out where their target had gone. When it was less than 10,000 kilometers away, Walker gave the order. Now. The Persistence's reactor flared to life, its signature suddenly visible again. Before the scout ship could react, Lisa launched a full spread of drones while simultaneously using the cargo grapples to seize 2 more incoming missiles. The scout ship, caught completely by surprise, took heavy damage from both the redirected missiles and the swarm of drones. Its engines flickered and died as the drones cut power conduits and damaged vital systems. Scout ship disabled, Lisa reported. Other Empire vessels are pulling back, reforming their line. Walker allowed himself a small smile. They'd just shown the Empire something they'd never seen before. A cargo ship that could fight back. But he knew this was just the beginning. Thompson, what else can we learn from that reactor? And how many more drones can we modify? The engineer was already deep in his calculations. The reactor's behavior is fascinating, sir. It's like it has patterns we never noticed during normal cargo operations. And as for the drones, we've barely scratched the surface. Their repair protocols can be adapted for all sorts of combat maneuvers. Sir, Lisa called out, I'm detecting changes in the Empire ship's formation. They're falling back. The tactical display showed the Empire vessels moving away, maintaining a safe distance while probably trying to figure out what they were dealing with. Their standard tactics had failed against this strange opponent that refused to fight like a proper warship. Walker stood up, walking to the center of the bridge. They'll be back, and they'll be ready for some of our tricks. We need more ideas. The bridge crew, energized by their success, began throwing out suggestions. The cargo holds could be converted into makeshift fighter bays for the drones. The old radiation shielding could be reconfigured to absorb enemy weapon fire. Every obsolete system on the ship suddenly held new potential. Message from command. Sir, the communications officer reported. They're asking for a full report on our engagement. They're especially interested in the reactor modifications and drone reprogramming. Walker nodded. What they'd discovered here could help other converted cargo ships fight back against the Empire. Every civilian vessel in the fleet could become a potential threat, using their outdated systems in ways the enemy would never expect. "Send them everything," he ordered. "But tell them we're not done yet. We've only just started figuring out what this old girl can do." As the crew worked to improve their improvised weapons and tactics, the Empire ships remained at the edge of their sensor range, a reminder that the real battle was still to come. But now, aboard the Persistence, there was something new in the air, something that felt like hope. Thompson's voice cut through the activity. "Captain, you need to see these new reactor readings. If I'm right about this pattern, we might be able to do something even more unexpected." Walker smiled. The ship that shouldn't win was about to become even more dangerous. The Empire fleet returned 3 hours later, just as Thompson finished implementing his latest modifications to the reactor. This time, they'd brought 7 ships instead of 5. The disabled scout ship still drifted in space, a testament to the Persistence's unexpected effectiveness. "They're moving in a widespread formation," Lisa reported from her tactical station. "Looks like they're trying to prevent us from focusing on a single target." Walker studied the tactical display. The Empire ships had learned from their first encounter, but they still didn't understand what they were really facing. "Thompson, is the new reactor configuration ready?" "Yes, sir," the engineer replied, his voice tight with excitement. "We can now create multiple false signatures. They'll think they're facing 3 ships instead of 1. The discovery had come from studying the reactor's strange behavior. Its shifting radiation patterns could be controlled more precisely than they'd first thought, allowing them to project phantom ships that would appear real to Empire sensors. "All hands, battle stations," Walker ordered. "Lisa, deploy the drone swarms in 3 groups. Let's make our ghost ships look real." The Persistence's cargo holds opened, releasing over 100 modified maintenance drones. Thompson had worked through his rest period, reprogramming more of them for combat duties. They split into 3 groups, matching the phantom signatures the reactor was projecting. "Empire ships are launching missiles," Lisa called out. "Multiple targets. They're trying to saturate our defenses." Walker smiled. "Show them our new trick. Catch what you can and let the rest chase our ghosts." The cargo grapples reached out, now operating with practiced precision. They caught the nearest missiles while others streaked past, following the false signatures. When the missiles reached their targets, they found nothing but empty space and confused sensor readings. "Enemy ships adjusting formation," Lisa reported. "They're trying to close in." "Perfect. Thompson, initiate reactor pulse sequence." The engineer's fingers danced across his console. The Persistence's reactor output suddenly spiked, creating a wave of radiation that washed over the Empire ship's sensitive sensors. For a crucial few seconds, their targeting systems were completely blind. "Drone swarms, attack pattern Delta," Walker commanded. The maintenance drones, their tools now deadly weapons, swarmed toward the nearest Empire ship. Without accurate sensor data, the ship's point defense systems fired wildly, missing most of the small targets. The drones reached the hull, cutting through weapon mounts and communication arrays with their repurposed repair tools. "First target losing power," Lisa announced. "Their main reactor is shutting down." But the Empire ships weren't done. The remaining vessels adjusted their tactics, forming a tight defensive circle. Their combined point defense fire created a wall of energy that would destroy anything that approached. "They're adapting," Walker noted. "Thompson, remember that idea you had about the cargo bay force fields?" The engineer grinned. "Ready when you are, sir. Though I still say it's crazy. Crazy is all we've got. Do it." Thompson activated his modified controls. The cargo bay force fields, designed to maintain atmosphere while loading and unloading containers, suddenly extended outward from the ship. They weren't powerful enough to stop weapons fire, but they didn't need to be. "All drones, fall back behind the fields," Walker ordered. The swarm retreated, taking shelter behind the flickering force fields. Empire weapons fire splashed against them, partially deflected and scattered. The fields wouldn't last long under this assault, but that wasn't the point. Fields are charged with reactor energy, Thompson reported. Ready to release. Walker leaned forward. Now. The force fields collapsed inward, but as they did, they released all the energy they'd absorbed from the Empire weapons. The resulting wave of power washed over the enemy formation, overloading shields and scrambling sensors. Multiple targets disabled. Lisa called out, her voice rising with excitement. 3. No, 4 ships reporting major system failures. The remaining Empire vessels, realizing they faced something they didn't understand, began to retreat. Their formation broke apart as each captain decided survival was more important than victory. Should we pursue? Lisa asked. Walker shook his head. Let them go. They'll tell others what happened here. Besides, we need to check on our crew. The battle had taken its toll on the Persistence. Several systems were running hot, and the reactor needed time to cool down. But they'd achieved something remarkable. A converted cargo ship had just defeated 7 Empire warships. Message from command. The communications officer reported. They're asking how we did it. Multiple ships are requesting our combat data. Send them everything, Walker ordered. Every ship like ours needs to know these tricks. Thompson looked up from his engineering station. Sir, I've been analyzing the reactor's behavior during the battle. There's something else it can do, something bigger. But I'll need time to work it out. Walker nodded. The Empire would return, probably with an even larger fleet. But now they had time to prepare, to refine their techniques, to make their impossible ship even more effective. Sir, Lisa called out, her voice softer now. The crew, they're calling us the Ghost Ship. The Empire ships were sending messages about a phantom that couldn't be killed. The nickname was fitting. They'd become something the Empire had never seen before. A cargo ship that fought like a ghost, appearing and disappearing, turning the enemy's strength against them. Damage report, Walker requested, already thinking about repairs. Hull integrity at 82%, Thompson replied. Main systems functioning within acceptable parameters. The reactor's actually running better than before, if you can believe it. It's like it's getting used to combat operations. Walker stood up, looking at his crew. Their faces showed exhaustion, but also pride. They'd taken a ship that should have been easy prey and turned it into something deadly. Get some rest, he ordered. All of you. We've won this battle, but the war isn't over. The Empire will be back, and next time they'll be trying to figure out how to fight a ghost. As the crew began their rest rotation, Walker stayed on the bridge, watching the tactical display where the retreating Empire ships were disappearing into the darkness of space. They'd discovered something important today. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the newest or most advanced. Sometimes it was the one nobody expected, used in ways nobody had imagined. The Persistence floated in space, its battle-scarred hull now wearing its wounds like badges of honor. It was no longer just a converted cargo ship. It was becoming a legend, a ghost that haunted the Empire's nightmares. And it was just getting started. News of the Persistence's victory spread through the human fleet like wildfire. Within days, cargo ships across human space began requesting information about their modifications. Walker found himself spending hours sending detailed reports to other captains, explaining how they'd turned their weaknesses into strengths. Another request for our drone programming, Lisa said, checking her messages. This time it's from the Star Merchant, a bulk carrier in the Rigel sector. Walker nodded. Send them everything. And make sure they understand about the reactor modifications. Those are key to making it all work. The bridge of the Persistence had become a command center of sorts. Screens displayed status reports from other converted cargo ships trying to replicate their success. Some had already achieved promising results. Thompson burst onto the bridge, his eyes bright with excitement. Captain, you need to see this. The reactor's doing something new. Walker followed his engineer to the main engineering display. The screen showed energy patterns he'd never seen before, swirling in complex formations. "Remember how the reactor adapted to combat?" Thompson explained. "Well, it's still adapting. I think it's developing new patterns on its own. If we can understand them, we might be able to do even more." Before Walker could respond, the tactical alert sounded. Lisa's hands flew across her console. Multiple Empire signatures detected. Largest fleet we've seen yet. 15 warships, including 2 heavy cruisers. "They're not taking any chances this time," Walker muttered. "Alert the other converted ships in range. It's time to see if our lessons paid off." 3 other cargo ships responded to their call. The Star Trader, the Bulk Pioneer, and the Heavy Lifter had all been modified following the Persistence's example. They weren't as experienced, but they were ready to fight. "Form up on our position," Walker ordered. "Remember the drills we practiced. Thompson, start the reactor masking sequence." The 4 converted cargo ships moved into formation, their ancient reactors synchronizing their output patterns. On Empire sensors, they would appear as a constantly shifting mix of phantom signatures, making it impossible to tell which ships were real and which were ghosts. "Empire fleet is approaching an attack formation," Lisa reported. "They're moving more cautiously this time." "They've learned," Walker said. "But so have we. All ships, deploy drone swarms." From the cargo holds of all 4 ships, hundreds of modified maintenance drones poured into space. They moved in coordinated patterns they'd practiced over the past weeks, forming complex defensive screens and attack formations. The Empire fleet opened fire, their advanced weapons lighting up space. But the cargo ships were ready. Their cargo grapples caught incoming missiles while their force fields deflected energy weapons. The drones darted through the gaps in the enemy's fire, targeting sensitive systems with surgical precision. Star Trader reports successful hits on the lead cruiser, Lisa called out. "Their new magnetic pulse generator is working. Enemy shields are fluctuating." The magnetic pulse generator had been Thompson's latest innovation, adapting cargo bay magnetic systems to disrupt shield harmonics. The Star Trader had been the first to successfully implement it. "Heavy Lifter is taking heavy fire," Lisa reported. "Their reactor masking is failing." "Move us in to cover them," Walker ordered. "Thompson, can you extend our force fields?" "Better than that," the engineer replied. "Watch this." Thompson activated his modified controls, and the Persistence's reactor output suddenly shifted. The energy pattern he'd discovered earlier manifested as a visible distortion in space, spreading out to envelop the Heavy Lifter. "What did you do?" Walker asked, watching as Empire weapons fire seemed to bend around the protected ship. "The reactors learned to generate a kind of displacement field," Thompson explained. "It's bending space slightly, not enough for fancy tricks, but enough to make their targeting solutions useless." The Empire fleet's formation began to break apart as their carefully planned attack fell into chaos. Their sensors couldn't get clear readings, their weapons couldn't find solid targets, and their shields were being stripped away by weapons that shouldn't have existed. "Bulk Pioneer is attempting that cargo bay trick we developed," Lisa reported. "They're using their loading cranes too. They're throwing cargo containers at the enemy ships." Walker watched as massive shipping containers, accelerated by powerful loading mechanisms, smashed into Empire vessels. The containers weren't heavily armored, but at those speeds, they didn't need to be. Empire ships scattered, their formation completely broken. "Multiple enemy ships powering down," Lisa announced. They're retreating. All of them." The bridge crew cheered as the mighty Empire fleet turned and fled, leaving behind their damaged vessels. What had started as one ship's desperate innovation had become a revolution in space warfare. "Message from command," the communications officer called out. "They're ordering all cargo ships in the fleet to begin immediate conversion using our specifications. We're to begin training crews as soon as possible." Walker smiled. The Empire had thought they were facing a single lucky ship, But now they would have to deal with an entire fleet of vessels that refused to fight by the normal rules. "Sir," Thompson said, his voice serious, "the reactor patterns, they're still evolving, and I'm getting similar reports from other ships. It's like each reactor is learning from the others, developing new tricks we never imagined. Keep studying them," Walker ordered. "Every new discovery is another advantage we can share." The four ships regrouped, their battle-scarred hulls testament to their unexpected victory. Crews exchanged congratulations and began sharing their experiences, each ship having discovered its own unique ways to use their improvised weapons. "The Empire's going to come back," Lisa said, looking at the tactical display where the enemy ships were retreating. "They'll try to adapt to our tactics." "Let them try," Walker replied. "We'll just keep changing the rules. That's the advantage of using systems that were never meant for combat. There's always another way to use them that nobody expects." As repair drones swarmed over their hulls, fixing battle damage, the four ships began transmitting their combat data to other converted cargo vessels throughout human space. Each victory, each innovation, each desperate improvisation became part of a growing library of unconventional warfare techniques. The Empire had wanted a conventional war, but instead, they'd gotten something they couldn't understand: a fleet of ships that fought like ghosts, using technology so old it had been forgotten, in ways that had never been imagined. And somewhere in the depths of these ancient ships, reactors that should have been obsolete were learning, changing, evolving into something new. Something that would change the face of space warfare forever. 2 months after their first victory, the Persistence led a fleet of 30 converted cargo ships toward the Empire's main battle group. Each ship had once been a simple hauler, but now they were something else, something that had the Empire's admirals losing sleep. "Enemy fleet holding position near the jump point," Lisa reported from her tactical station. 43 warships, including their new flagship. Walker nodded, studying the tactical display. The Empire had gathered their largest fleet yet, determined to end the threat of these converted cargo ships once and for all. "All ships reporting ready," the communications officer announced. "The reactor synchronization network is active." Thompson had outdone himself with that innovation. By linking the ancient reactors of all 30 ships, they could create phantom signatures on a massive scale, making their fleet appear to be hundreds of vessels strong. "Signal all ships," Walker ordered. "Begin Operation Ghost Storm." The converted cargo fleet split into 5 groups, their reactors projecting false signatures that made each group appear to be a full battle squadron. The Empire fleet's sensors lit up with hundreds of apparent targets, their computers struggling to determine which were real. "Enemy fleet is launching fighters," Lisa called out. "Lots of them. They're trying to get visual confirmation of our numbers." "Deploy the drones," Walker commanded. "Show them our latest trick." From the cargo holds of every converted ship, swarms of maintenance drones emerged. But these weren't the simple, repurposed repair units they'd started with. Thompson and the other engineers had been busy, creating new variants specialized for different combat roles. Some drones carried magnetic pulse generators, ready to disrupt enemy shields. Others were equipped with modified cargo grapples, capable of catching and redirecting enemy missiles. A third type used cutting tools to slice through hull armor. But the real surprise was yet to come. "All ships, activate the resonance fields," Walker ordered. Thompson had discovered this capability by accident while studying the linked reactor patterns. When properly synchronized, the old reactors could generate fields that made Empire energy weapons refract and scatter, turning their own firepower against them. The Empire fleet opened fire, their energy beams and missiles streaking toward the converted cargo ships. But the resonance fields caught the energy weapons, bending them in impossible ways, while cargo grapples snatched missiles out of space. "They're trying to jam our reactor network," Thompson reported. "But they can't. These old systems are too primitive for their modern jamming techniques to affect." Sometimes, Walker thought, being outdated was the best defense. Star Trader reports successful penetration of enemy lines. Lisa announced. Their cargo bay catapults are launching the new drone carriers. This was their masterstroke. They'd converted cargo containers into drone carriers, each one holding hundreds of smaller drones. The containers were launched at high speed toward enemy formations, breaking apart to release their swarms precisely where they were needed. The Empire fleet's formation began to crumble as they found themselves fighting enemies they couldn't properly target, using weapons that sometimes turned against them, while swarms of drones methodically dismantled their ships. Their flagship is moving, Lisa reported. They're trying to coordinate a counterattack. Now, Walker ordered, all ships execute pattern ghost dance. The 30 cargo ships moved in perfect synchronization, their linked reactors creating a massive web of false signatures and energy distortions. To Empire sensors, it would appear as if space itself was coming apart. Enemy ships are losing targeting lock, Lisa called out. Their formation is breaking down completely. Walker watched as the mighty Empire fleet fell into chaos. Their advanced technology, designed to fight conventional battles, proved useless against opponents that refused to fight conventionally. Multiple Empire ships powering down weapons, Lisa reported, excitement in her voice. They're signaling surrender. The bridge crew cheered, but Walker kept his focus. Maintain combat stance. Thompson, status of the reactor network. Stable and getting stronger, the engineer replied. The patterns we're seeing now. Sir, I think these old reactors are creating something entirely new. The way they're linking and adapting, it's beyond anything in our database. The Empire flagship, its weapons silent, began broadcasting on all frequencies. The message was simple. They wanted to talk. They're requesting a ceasefire, the communications officer reported. Their admiral wants to meet. Walker smiled. The Empire had finally realized that their technological superiority meant nothing against human ingenuity and adaptation. Their mighty warships had been defeated by cargo haulers that should have been easy prey. Signal all ships, Walker ordered. Stand down combat operations but maintain defensive posture. And get me a channel to the Empire flagship. As the two fleets hung in space, their positions marked by the scattered debris of battle, Walker reflected on how far they'd come. The Persistence, a ship that should never have survived its first fight, had sparked a revolution in space warfare. Message from command, the communications officer announced. They're calling this the turning point of the war. Every cargo ship in human space is being converted using our methods. Thompson looked up from his engineering station. It's more than that, sir. What we've discovered here, these reactor patterns, and the way they adapt, this could change everything. Not just warfare, but space travel, energy generation, everything. Walker nodded. They'd started with a desperate attempt to survive, but they'd ended up discovering something that could reshape humanity's future, all because they'd been forced to look at their old, outdated systems in new ways. Sir, Lisa called out. The other ships are requesting permission to perform a victory formation. Granted, Walker said. They've earned it. The 30 converted cargo ships moved into a precise formation, their battle-scarred hulls reflecting the light of distant stars. They were no longer just cargo haulers playing at being warships. They had become something new, a force that had changed the rules of space warfare forever. The Empire fleet, once so proud and mighty, remained silent as negotiations began. They had learned a harsh lesson. Sometimes the most dangerous opponent wasn't the one with the most advanced weapons, but the one who found new ways to use old tools. As Walker prepared for the meeting with the Empire Admiral, he looked at his crew, cargo handlers and engineers who had become warriors, not by choice but by necessity. They had proven that innovation and adaptation were more powerful than any weapon. The Persistence had lived up to its name, persisting against impossible odds, and in doing so, it had shown the way forward for all of humanity. The ship that shouldn't win had done more than just win. It had changed the game entirely.